Hi guys, the Builder Investor here again. I hope you're well. I just want to have a bit of a chat really about buy-to-let mortgages and finance and anything else that you think you may need to consider before diving in and buying that next investment property. Before we go any further, if you'd like to just go down there, just down below, and just hit the like and subscribe button, that helps us out no end. Stick with us and we'll run through it all. Right, so what is a buy-to-let mortgage and how does it work? What's the makeup and basically why do investors use them? There are other options out there. Obviously you can buy with cash and they do say cash is king. Obviously, yeah, it's good because the fact that you can move swiftly, you can basically cut out the mortgage process of an application, but eventually you will run out of cash. And the other good thing that you've got with a buy-to-let mortgage is you get the use of leveraging your money. So you can take basically whatever you've got, say you've got 100,000, you would only need 25k of that to leverage as a deposit to be able to buy that £100,000 property. So a buy-to-let mortgage is basically exactly what it says on the tin. It's a mortgage that you will use to purchase a property for investment that you wish to let out. Generally, they are interest-only repayments. You can get buy-to-let mortgage where you actually pay down the debt, but 99% of the time they'll be interest only. This will allow you to keep your payments down and obviously the rent up, so the cash flow on that property is at the maximum. So where do we go from there on? So with a buy-to-let mortgage, you can do it in two different ways. You can buy it in your personal name or you can buy it through a limited company. Obviously both have got their advantages, both have got their disadvantages. One of the main advantages is that you can claim expenses applicable to that actual property. You can claim them back. Whereas buying in your personal name, with the introduction of Section 24, that now prohibits that. So it's kind of got to the point now where I would say generally 80, maybe 90% of people that buy buy-to-let properties actually use a limited company. Yes, when it is a brand new limited company, you may need to get a personal guarantee, but it's not an issue. Obviously, I'm not a qualified tax advisor, so it would be beneficial to actually check this with an accountant or a registered tax advisor before you go ahead and choose which route that you wish to go, whether you buy in your personal name or whether you buy in a limited company. Obviously, if you're the higher tax bracket, there is far more beneficial reasons for buying in that limited company too. So, how much will the bank lend you, or whatever lender that you choose to use, how much will they lend you? Basically, typically at this moment in time in filming, the loan to value is generally 75%, so you will need to find that 25% deposit. Personally, I wouldn't like to over leverage. Obviously you can take those 80% or even that 100% if you can find one, but you've got to bear in mind that the property market obviously goes in dips and troughs. Obviously over the 10-year period, we've discussed this before, that it will generally double in value in 10 years. But over the short term, you're going to be going peaks and troughs. So over leveraging is generally not a good idea within property. You've got to be thinking long term. So as a general rule of thumb, stick with that 75% loan to value and utilise paying that 25% deposit. So say for instance we were buying a 100k property, just to make the numbers easy for me. Obviously out of that 75%, they would lend you £75,000 and you would need to find that £25,000 of your deposit yourself. Obviously bear in mind there are other costs involved, so you've got solicitors, you've got stamp duty, you've got holding costs, there are other costs involved. So don't just think, I've got 25 grand, I can go and buy a 100k house. That's not how it works. You need to look at every cost that's implicated. But then obviously the good part of leveraging your money is the fact that over time, and we all know that property is a time game, you know, as was it Warren Buffett that said it's time in the market that beats time in the market. So you've got to basically wait that time out, wait for the property to go up in value, and then at some point you will be able to refinance and take some of that money back out of that property. Generally leaving kind of 10, 15k within that property, just to make sure that there's some equity in there, just in case if there's a dip in the market. We don't want to be over leveraging and ending up in negative equity. This is a classic case of what happened back when they were doing the 100% mortgages and they refinanced the next day. So how these companies will look at this mortgage application is based upon the rent that you're going to be able to achieve from that property. If you're new to the game, obviously they will take into consideration the fact whether you're earning yourself, obviously, because if that property is in a void period, the mortgage has still got to be paid. So sometimes they like to see things like wage slips or tax returns. But yeah, as a general rule of thumb, we have to stress test it, and we are stress testing at 1.5%. So say for instance the mortgage payment on that buy-to-let property is around £500 per month. At 1.5% over the top, you will need to be gaining about £750 a month in payments for the rent in order for the mortgage company to actually lend that money to you. Obviously you've got to factor in things like voids, you've got to factor in maintenance, you've got to factor in quite a few different things. Obviously, someone could come into your property and not pay the rent for a number of months. Obviously that mortgage has still got to be paid. So mortgage companies take this on board, and this is how they work it out. So obviously when you're looking for that property, you've got to take this into consideration and work out what kind of yield you're going to get, what kind of rent this property will achieve based against the mortgage payment that you're going to be having to pay. And then on the other hand, what we need to look at is obviously the interest rate of which that mortgage provider is offering you. Obviously back in the past we've had like ridiculously low rates, like 1.5. Well, I think my mortgage was on a 1.3% at one point, and obviously it's unrealistic to think that it's going to stay there forever. And obviously we've seen that now. At the time of filming this, we're around about 6% at the minute. So it's always worth stress testing your purchase at around about 6%. At the moment, me personally, when I find properties for my investors, I'm stress testing them at 7%, just to be on the safe side. The last thing that I want is for the interest rate to go up again and it catch me out, which it is doing a lot now. People have obviously got personal mortgages on their personal residences. They've seen that the interest rates are really cheap. Everyone's rushed out to buy a property because the interest rates are so low. A lot of people have made massive mistakes in thinking that they're going to stay there forever. They're not. Obviously they've tied themselves in for 3 or 4 years at 1.5%, and all of a sudden they've had to refinance it recently and it's jumped up to 6%. A lot of people are having to sell their houses because they can't physically afford the mortgage. So you've got to make sure that you stress test. I can't say this implicitly enough. You need to stress test at a decent interest rate before you actually go out and take a mortgage on. So probably the last thing that we're going to look at, and quite an important one, and one that's very much overlooked by a lot of investors, is you've got fees for entry into a product, you've got fees for exit out of a product, and you've got fees for early repayment in a product. You need to factor these in. Obviously, you may find a product that's at, say, 4%. Well, you won't now. You maybe 5.5%. You might find one at 5.5% at the moment, but it's got massive charges for entry and exit, and then early redemption charges. You could find one that's at 6.2%, but got no exit charge, or the exit charge is a lot less. So that kind of one balances out the other. So you need to look at this. The best way of basically getting around this is make sure that you use a really good qualified mortgage broker, someone that you've used before, or someone that's been recommended to you. I tell you what, if you're struggling to find a good mortgage broker, drop a comment below and I'll pass one on to you. But yeah, you need to work these things out, and you need to look at the products that are being offered to you and look at the charges. Don't just think, oh, that's a really cheap interest rate, that's the one for me. That's generally not the case. You need to look behind the scenes. You need to look at the charges for, like I say, early redemption. You need to look at the exit and the entrance charges for that product. So obviously with the exit fees, generally on a buy-to-let mortgage, they're not there. They're more towards bridging finance. But obviously with that early redemption fee, it's one that catches so many people out, like seasoned investors that have been doing it for years. They don't look at it. And obviously an example of that, if you're buying on the BRR, which is the buy, refurbish, refinance model, obviously you're going to be purchasing that property, you're going to be going in, doing any works that are needed to bring the value up, and then at that point, once it's done, you will get it surveyed and evaluated, and you will refinance to try and pull some money back out. Most lenders will have a 2-year early redemption period. So if you want to refinance within that 2 years, so say it takes you 6 months to do that work, and you want to refinance and pull the money out, you're going to have to be looking at that cost. I'm not saying don't take that product because there is a cost, but you need to factor that in within your calculations. So yeah, that's another thing that we need to think about when we're taking on a buy-to-let mortgage. And that's a wrap, folks. So that's buy-to-let mortgages covered for you. If you think that we've missed anything, and I'm probably almost certain that we have, because I've just done this video just off the cuff, drop a comment below and tell us what we've missed. If you think it was a good video, drop us a comment below and tell us. And if you could also do us a massive favour, just drop down there somewhere, I think it's down there, and just hit that like and that subscribe button. It'll help us out massively, and I'll be eternally grateful. We'll catch you in a bit, folks.